Hi, this is Dream. I just wanted to make a quick video going over the different defensive schemes that we're seeing on Hanamura Point A through the first couple of weeks of Stage 4, and then which offenses are working and not working against them. Now, just to get started, the map layout has a very small choke followed by a big open area and the point itself. So if we just draw an imaginary line through the middle of the point here, we'll see defenses either claiming the left side and forcing the offenses to the right, or they'll claim the right side and force the offenses to the left. Now, regardless of which side the defense claims, they're still going to be taking their first fight up by the choke here. Now, that's for a couple reasons. One, a choke is just always good to fight in. It means you know where they're going to come from. You can spam in here. Characters like Zenyatta are going to have a very hard time. So that's the obvious reason. But the second reason is so they can get two fights. So it's just like in an escort map where you want that first engagement to happen early so you can get a second engagement in. Even if you lose the first one as the defense, you can get a second one in before they've completed that stage. So with that in mind, these first fights will happen, and if the defense isn't successful on the first fight, they have a second position that they rotate to, that they're ready for. They would prefer to fight in this first position just because, as previously stated, the choke is such a big advantage. These second positions are not as big of an advantage. So they want to keep the fights in these first positions. So the attacking team's goal is to force the fight onto the point. They want to move positions. They want to force you to rotate. So there's two ways they can do that. Either they can get some picks and just force you to have to back off, wait for respawns, regroup, and then recontest as a team. That can happen on either side. Or it's based on being able to just straight contest the point. And that can mean you've just let one or two people get onto the point and they can't be handled without the whole team rotating. Or it can mean you're able to successfully ferry 5 or 6 people all through here, and then they can all get in position and the defense is forced to move. So those are really the two goals that the offense is going to have to try and get away from these initial formations. Now, to see one of these initial formations, here's a high ground position that we see using an Orisa Junkrat comp. Here's the core. The Orisa Junkrat and the two supports will hang out on high ground. The D.Va and Widow will start out on high ground and then roam as needed. Gladiators and Spitfire have shown this here in the past, both very good at it. But we do see when they're under pressure and they're not able to get as much done with their tank pressure Junkrat that they want to, they'll have to fall back, and they end up moving to something like this, where the Orisa puts her barrier here. The team has rotated around. In a pinch, they'll go this way, but usually they'll go around back, and they'll set up here, get the back line situated as well, and contest the point this way. So that's kind of their stage 1 versus their stage 2, and that's really the only style we see on the left side. We see it from a couple of teams, but it's pretty consistent between them. Now on the right side, we have a little more variety. We see some dive, particularly New York and San Francisco will run this. San Francisco prefers the Ana to this Mercy. But other than that, they are both going to have their dive tanks up front, kind of harassing as you make it through the choke, looking for picks with their Widow or their Zen, and building up ultimates here. If they're not able to get anything, if they're pressured out and they have to move, right, this initial choke fight doesn't work out for them, they move like this. And the tanks are going to retreat back, the supports are going to fall back, and you're going to have your tanks taking turns contesting the point while your DPS make plays to get picks. The DPS are not always Widow Tracer. You can also throw a Genji or a Junkrat in here, kind of mix and match all over the place. That'll obviously, a Junkrat wouldn't be right here, but it's still the same rotation. And we'll see a similar rotation on the right-hand side barrier compositions as well. So if we look at their initial position, this is what we'll see from the Valiant often, is an Orisa comp with this Roadhog and either a Junkrat or a Brigitte, sitting here to really just deny this space to an extreme degree. And when they're in trouble, they'll rotate back. Now, we also see Dallas run a barrier comp. They do not run the Orisa. They run a Reinhardt variant here, and sometimes they even move their Reinhardt all the way up front. But it's the same concept. You hold up here, you're all about just denying this space. You just make it all yours. And you don't want to let them through at all. Force fights here if you have to, but just don't let them off to the sides is kind of your goal. Now, when you're in trouble, when you have let them get off to the sides, you're going to fall back and it's going to look like this, okay? You're going to have your barrier tank, whether it's the Orisa or the Reinhardt, re-entering usually this way into the point. Your supports will be back here trying to stay safe, and you'll keep having your DPS looking for those openings. So those are kind of the setups, the A and the B setups for each of these styles. And now I want to look at some clips of those styles in action and when they're forced to transition, kind of what happens. Alright, so here we have the Gladiators playing defense against the Dallas Fuel, running the high horse defense, so I want to go over this clip. Before I do, though, I do want to say that in between making the first and the second part of this video, Jane, an Overwatch analyst and community figure, announced a contest relating to analyzing Hanamura Point A, and specifically the Philly versus Dallas match. So I am going to address that a little bit at the end, but I want to talk about my initial points here, and Dallas was actually a part of that. But here we go. As we push in, we're going to see Mickey going straight through for the contest while the rest of his team goes off to the flank on the right. OG is going to get punished, though, and he's going to get booped in the air by a concussion mine and cleaned up. And Silk Thread is able to put the pressure here, and then Mickey gets killed as well. And that is basically the end of the push. It takes a while for the rest of Dallas to die, but they do end up resetting and having to push again. And again, this is just this high ground being very strong and using the Junkrat to punish the tanks here. Now we see this happen again on their next push, which is going to be up here. And as they come in, Surefour's on the high ground. This time they've swapped Harry Hook onto Lucio. They've used their rally, and they speed boost in. But OG is still going to get booped up, and then booped up again, okay? And completely cleaned up. Not able to be saved by the speed boost plus defense matrix. Still juggled around, and he ends up falling. Now, miraculously, the Dallas Fuel actually end up winning this fight. After a very prolonged fight. They're able to get enough people on here, and they can respawn and get back to the point quick enough that they end up making this fight work eventually. So speed boosting straight through to the point worked for them, and then they continued to run it and actually improved it a little bit as they played Philly. So Philly's running the same defensive strategy on the high ground, and Dallas is running the lineup they ran on the second push. They've already got Harry Hook on Lucio on the first push here. So what they do, and we will see this go through, is as they speed boost, we see Taimu and Unko stay, and with the speed boost, they're able to get everyone in position during the defense matrix duration, and they don't get booped around by the concussion mine. And now, you can't rotate straight through the middle, right here, if you're most of Philadelphia Fusion, because of Taimu and Unko in the choke. So because of that, only Choyobin, or I'm sorry, not Choyobin, only Hotba, rather, is able to come onto the point. And because only Hotba is able to come onto the point, he gets cleaned up. And because he's dead and Taimu still has the sight line, now Sato tries to finally rotate on the point, Taimu cleans him up, and that's that. So speed boosting onto the point with this composition has worked again for Dallas Fuel against this high ground. So I think, even though Jane's questions were about the reverse side of this match, I think this could use some work as well. Valiant has a different low ground strategy that may be more effective against a speed boost, but this high ground strat seems to have a hard time against a speed boost. Now, another thing that in my opinion works against this high ground strat is dive. And if we see here, San Francisco Shock opts to run dive against London. Sleepy gets picked early and then rezzed here, as we see. And then Choyobin goes in for the dive along with Super, Architect, and Moth. Now, they go in, they're trying to push Birdring down, not necessarily get any kills, not really engage on the backline, just take up some space here and then rotate on the point, right? So all they really are trying to do is force out some cooldowns and force everybody to back off so they can get space. They get on the point, they lose Architect, but they get 3 important people on the point, the dive tanks and the Mercy. So not only the dive tanks, but they have sustain, they have help, okay? So what this means is you've got to rotate. So Spitfire comes straight through, there's no Widow to threaten, so they can do the direct rotation here. But the problem is, as soon as Gesture drops down with the shield, and we see Fury isn't even on the Diva, he is on this Brigitte, but even against Brigitte, this dive is going to work, because as soon as he drops down off this point, it's go time, and they get on Badoshan. So as soon as the drop happens, boom, they're in, and Badoshan dies. So this, I mean, Super does end up dying here, he steps on a Junkrat trap, but this is a win. San Francisco ends up capturing the point as this fight continues. So that's really what we're seeing, and how the high ground defense has been working as far as how Gladiators and the Spitfire have been running it. Now, if we want to take a look at what the Valiant have been running on the low ground with their shield composition, they started out running this comp. Now, earlier in the map, Florida was running Double Sniper, which I do not believe works very well on Hanamura, just because you do not have good crossfire sightlines, and I'm just not a fan of it on Hanamura A in general. But we see them swap to dive, which I think is the right choice here, and Valiant ends up losing to this swap, and the reason for that is Fate dies. And if Fate dies, you have to be able to res him. The Orisa is the core of your defensive line to be able to hold together. So once Fate dies, and Zuppe uses his trans so that Mayhem can just stand on the body and prevent any res from happening. So because that happens, Fate ends up having to switch to D.Va to get back to the point, and the fight just kind of devolves. Valiant splits up into a bunch of different areas. They're trading kills back and forth. Agilities is going to die here. And that's better for the dive team that has the spawn advantage, right? They're going to like these chaotic split up fights. So Florida does end up winning this prolonged fight, even though Soon swaps to Brigitte on the way back. It's not enough. It doesn't matter. So now what we see happen later on, though, when they play against Boston, is they run a Brigitte for Agilities. He's not on the Junkrat anymore. They've moved him to Brigitte. And there's two very important reasons why this Brigitte is a big upgrade. And one is the ability to help keep Fate alive. An extra support just means extra peeling, extra heals, and of course the armor working with Orisa's shift for Fortify is also super good. So that's great, right? That's going to help keep Fate alive. That's going to help keep your supports alive, or like Mercy if she has to dive. Now, or has to res, I'm sorry. Now, the other thing that Agilities enables, though, is he can contest the point. You can just throw a Zen Orb on him, and here he is, just contesting, fighting Note, and he's going to continue to pressure the point. He doesn't allow the dive to force his whole team to rotate. Unless their entire team is pushed in, he can contest by himself, and they can do exactly what you just saw there. The Halt Hook combo, their tanks can pressure the choke while still staying in position because they have that Halt Hook. And then while they send Agilities back to the point, he can just have a Zen Orb on him and be able to fight flankers and fight dive tanks. So it allows the tank support kind of duels to go both sides for Valiant. They win the Halt Hook combo on the enemy backline, but Agilities is able to stop their tanks from having the same level of effectiveness. So I think that this flex for Agilities onto the Brigitte is very, very good, and I think this is looking like a very strong comp from Valiant. So I expect to see them do well on maps where they can run this comp, and you'll see they do well on the next push. They're able to keep everyone alive, keep Fate alive, and again we see Agilities on the Brigitte staying around the point and getting cleanup kills. So this is a very strong comp in my opinion, and it's good to see them kind of shore up the weaknesses they were seeing with that prior composition. And Space is a ridiculous Roadhog. He is super good. Okay, and then let's take a look at the Dallas and Philly game. The first thing that I view as an issue here is Philly running this double sniper. I'm not a fan of double sniper on Hanamura A for two reasons. Well, one reason in general, you don't have that big crossfire, but I also think it's a bad pick into Dallas's comp, and the reason for that is because D.Va can really shut down Hanzo's ability to harass just by sitting here. See her getting double pocketed right now. She's going to get a lot of healing resources just to shut down EQO. And the way double sniper works is you use the Hanzo to pressure Reinhardt, particularly. That's what it's good against, is these Reinhardt comps. And you run the Hanzo and you damage boost him, and he just destroys Reinhardt's shield. Reinhardt has no shield, he's super vulnerable, and then you have a crossfire with your snipers, and your tanks have no shielding, and you just kill everyone. It's very good on maps like King's Row. Not as good here because you don't have that crossfire, and because D.Va can just fly up in the window and prevent your Hanzo from being able to do that harass, from being able to, poke down your Rein or your Rein shield. D.Va very easily can continually prevent that. And that just means Taimu on the Widow is going to have the advantage on both snipers, because they're going to have to be peeking quickly with a D.Va in their face, and he's going to have a healthy round shield. He's going to have better sightlines. So that's why we see the 2 snipers fail against the 1. Now, Philly switches to dive, which I think is the right call here. I think this is a good pick into this composition. We'll look at what they should have been running from the start, but if you have to adjust, you have to change your comp to counter this, I think dive is good because you don't need super long to build up those ultimates, and you can make big plays, okay? You can force rotations as well, which I think is very important. They get a kill onto Taimu, so that allows them to go in on this first push and start building up towards their ultimates. Eventually, they are not able to get anything on this first push. I think maybe they overcommitted the trans, but that wasn't the biggest deal. Boombox almost gets it back. The issue with this push was this was supposed to be an economy push. This self-destruct should not have been used. That's a problem. The tanks end up getting staggered anyways, and you just end up pushing in without your self-destruct. There was no reason to use that there. They should have just reset, and it would have helped them a lot. So I think coming into this situation, you forced OG off of the Reinhardt and onto the Winston. This is still a strong composition when they have to panic swap kind of their main tank at the end. This will still work, and it'll especially still work against dive. But it's not as strong as it is with the Reinhardt. So as Sato jumps in, this is very important. Sato just butt jumped into the point there, and is touching the point. Okay, we'll see in a second. He gets on the point with less than 3 seconds left. So the overtime is already going to go. We know this fight is going to overtime. We know they're contesting to force overtime. See, here he is. He's on the point. It's under 3 seconds. That means that even if he steps off the point right now, it'll still go into overtime. EQO gets way too eager with his blade. Okay, if we see by the end of this fight, Sato almost had his primal. Boombox almost had his Zenot. They needed to just play a little more patient, okay? And if they had Hatba's self-destruct to go in and make some space to either help Sato stay alive a little longer to play the ping-pong game, or to clear the way for Neptuno to come in and res, either way, this would be a big help. Not having this zoning tool is what forces Philly to kind of come in and panic and rush. Now, he sees the healing here. You have to assume this is Widow, even though he doesn't know. You would think just a dash here would be a good plan, a good contest idea. Not necessarily ulting, but he sees Harry Hook and wants to end the game right here, or wants to end the push, and just pulls his blade. But look at this. Brigitte right here ready to stun. Zen ready to help out. He's in Taimu's sightlines. OG is even going to come over and deal some damage too, and he just gets destroyed. And that's it. It's over. But he dies, and then look at how close everyone gets to their ultimates. Boombox, 96% he dies. I think Sato makes it like all the way to 98 or 90. Yeah, 98 before he dies. Neptuno's close. So really, they needed to stall some more. But other than that, I think these swaps strategy-wise were fine. I think trying to force that blade was really the big initial issue. And they didn't have time to really force the rotation as much on that first point because they don't have time for the slow push. They need to build up those ults. So it's a good econ push, but I think maybe holding on to the trans and definitely holding on to the self-destruct would have helped. And that's what allowed Dallas to hold there, in my opinion. But here are actually some examples of Dallas losing, okay, this point being captured by the Gladiators. Now, this was before Dallas played their Philly game, and Taimu was on McCree, and I think moving him onto Widow was an improvement to the composition. So we do have to have that as a caveat. But we see the initial push from Gladiators. I think this is a great strategy. I think Zarya-based strategies do very well against the Dallas Fuels composition. And I think running this triple tank, triple support is a great option. I think the issue on this first push here is not in theory, but in execution. And basically, Surefour gets caught by a volley. I think they should have either had the shield or the defense matrix up for more of this run. They have the speed boost. Use your defensive option while you're speed boosting in, and then go all out. But we see here, Surefour just gets domed by chips. Gets destroyed. And he's gone. And it's a little bit of a scrap back and forth. They get a little bit of trading, but their team gets split up. Their healers kind of get forced back into this corner to retreat. And that leaves the tank split out to die. So, definitely, Surefour being able to stay alive and keep, pressure on everyone pushing in and help support the other healers would have been ideal there, would have helped out. So that's why that first push fails. Now, the second push, there's a very interesting interaction here that happens. So we see, again, LA with the same comp. They're trying to speed boost in. They're trying to punish OG, who has the Earth Shatter available, okay? What happens here is it's split second. You're going to see it. OG is going to use his ultimate. You barely see the animation go off. Surefour stuns him right after, but he still gets the ult off, and he's actually able to interrupt the Coalescence from Shaz with it. So he's stunned right now. He already got it off. It just happened. And you'll see as Mickey turns around, the supports are on the ground. Shaz used his ultimate. That's a big play from OG that was just a hair from going the Gladiator's way. So big hold. They completely destroy in the fight, but it really was down to that very small margin, which is, you know, super interesting to see if that's something they could change with the comp. But Gladiators end up deciding they want to move over to a Mercy Zen comp once they've got this grab up. And this is important because, oh, I skipped a little too far forward here. Okay, so basically when we see the Gladiators pushing in, the Dallas Fuel are terrified of this grab. They have nothing to deal with the grab other than hopefully Seagull eating it. We have learned this meta that trans does not keep you alive through a graviton. You're gonna die if you get grabbed. So they don't have a big tank ult. They don't have their own grab. They don't have their shatter up to try and pressure. So OG is trying to keep his shield alive at all costs. He doesn't want to get shattered, and he wants to have his shield to help protect his team during a grab. So he's just playing back, trying to keep his shield alive, giving up space, and Gladiators is happy to take it. So they push him back and push him back. He's discorded, he puts up a shield, it's low, and then he just gets knocked off the map. He gets hammered and then Diva booped like at the same time and just destroyed. And now Chips uses the trans to try and survive the grab, but it doesn't matter, and they get wiped. So I think these grab-based comps will work well against Dallas, because even with the rally, even with the trans, they can't survive. So I think this is a great out-of-the-gate composition that Philly could have run. Any Zarya-based comp, I think you can make work a tank-heavy Zarya comp. I think you know Dallas is going to run this composition. I think if you can hard read that, Zarya comp is your best bet. But they also have another one, because they didn't need a full cap, they just needed a tick. So this time they decided to use Sombra on their second offense. Now I like the Sombra pick. I think just like the Zarya comp, they ran it a different way than I would. If I was running that Zarya comp, I would have speed boosted into the left side and forced the fight on the actual point instead of, you know, just fighting point blank with the team. Just because you have no hit scan, they have a hit scan. So they're going to have the advantage in the open. Just fight on the point. You know, you're a Moira comp, fight on the point, in my opinion there. But I like this initial move from Surefour just to get in and go on the flank, kind of draw their attention back and harass. But he needs to be harassing the tanks, and he needs to be farming his EMP. Instead, they kind of go for an assassination here. He and Silk Thread are able to kill Chips, but then the tanks come in too, and I really think this is an overcommitment. And they end up dying. This direct dive into the Deathfall isn't really how you want to execute this with a Sombra, just because she doesn't have that sustained high damage output throughout a whole team fight. So you see the Gladiators have to reset, but then when they do their second push, it's really what I like to see here. So what we have is the tanks come in. Okay, as you can see, Mercy's healing up the Diva and the Tracer as they go in, and then Winston jumps in right after. So they get the dive tanks in, and then they survive the aggression at the choke. Their supports get away. This allows them to pressure the point. These two tanks, and we all know, of course, Sombra can get in whenever she wants. So they have a lot of pressure on this point. Good flashbang, but they're not able to get the kill. And in this whole time, basically, Shaz gets his trans, pops it on the point, and that allows Fissure to build up his ultimate. And then they damage boost Surefour since he's standing in the trans. He's relatively safe, right? And they're going to damage boost the Surefour, the Sombra here, Surefour, and he's going to build up his EMP and then use that to open up the fight. So as soon as this trans ends, Surefour has already got that EMP from the damage boost, and he's going to pop it to kill Chips, okay? And Brigitte can't really save the Zen from an EMP. And here we have Fissure, who's been playing up at the choke the whole time, staying alive, got a lot of healing. Shaz almost hit another trans, but Fissure dodging the shatter, building up his ultimate, and now they're ready to go. So it doesn't matter that Silk Thread's dead. They're going to EMP, boom, all the shield's gone. He gets destroyed, and then Fissure jumps in to follow up on the EMP with the Primal Rage. They kill Taimu, As he's still hacked from the EMP, they Valk to get the damage boost, and it's over. These ultimates are all online. There's been too many picks, and they're gonna get their tick. They only needed the one. They only need to win a fight for 20 seconds, right? They don't have to completely team wipe. They just have to win the fight for a short amount of time. You don't have that opportunity to re-engage when only the tick can be given. So this is another good way that you can beat the Dallas Fuel strategy, even though they were running this McCree instead of the Widow. I think these comps that are good at just winning team fights, winning brawls, that's what Dallas is running, these big brawly comps. Or you can run a dive composition. I think you don't have to run a Sombra. You can run a Genji comp. I think the composition that Philly had was fine. I think just the last stagger from the second to last fight and then the final fight execution were just off a bit. But I do like the Sombra a lot. I think if you can run the Sombra, that's a very good pick. I think the post from Jane said something specifically about the Houston Outlaws. The Outlaws don't really have super strong dive, Sombra or Genji. So in that case, I would say a Zarya-based composition would be what I would be looking to run here, potentially even putting Spree in for the map, depending on what other heroes you wanted to run on defense on point B, right? But I think a Zarya-based composition is going to be your best bet to just bust through the wall that Dallas Fuel likes to set up. And a Zarya-based composition that could have a Hanzo, just not a Hanzo that's reliant on these double sniper peeking lanes. That triple tank Hanzo that they run on King's Row definitely has potential to work against the Dallas composition here as well. So that's kind of my thoughts on Hanamura A defenses, both what we've seen in general and then kind of addressing what Jane was asking about in his post with the Philly versus Dallas matchup as well. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any comments, feedback, anything like that, please be sure to leave that below. Thanks.